This episode of Twin Cities Trekkies is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor before, let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that help you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. They'll also help you to distribute your podcast so it can be heard on many different platforms, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's all you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, everyone, welcome to episode 17 of Twin Cities Trekkies. I am Wes,
And I'm Kenzie.
and today we're going to talk about the fathers of Star Trek. This is actually in celebration of Father's Day, which is also in June. Fathers in Star Trek have been treated quite badly compared to the mothers of Star Trek, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Which is it's kind of weird because I think it's personally weird because like we mentioned before, the writing on the shows have been hit or miss regarding writing female characters. But when it comes to and the mothers, but when it comes to fathers, the writers treat fathers really, really bad. It's unfortunate. And
With an exception of Benjamin Sisko, because
yeah.
man, what a dad!
Mhm.
That representation is my favorite father figure in Star Trek.
Yeah. And so we'll definitely talk about the fathers of Star Trek in the era. I mean, with all the fathers of Star Trek. I know there are a few of them here. So to get in touch with us, tctrekkiespodcast@gmail.com is our email address. Feel free to send us an email. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. The handle is TC Trekkies Pod for both. Just find the episode there. I usually put a post about it, and here's the YouTube link, that kind of thing. We're also available on YouTube. Twin Cities Trekkies is pretty easy to find. Pretty sure if you want to listen through YouTube, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you subscribe and hit that bell, because every episode is available roughly about on midnight on Wednesday mornings. So episodes are dropped there and stuff like that, and we're available on pretty much every platform you can think of. But to send us voice messages, I'm going to let you know how to do that. Go to anchor.fm/Twin Cities Trekkies. Once there, press the little message button, and there are options to send voice messages. Just keep in mind that if you do send a voice message, it automatically sends an email to the TC Trekkies podcast at gmail.com email address. So once it's submitted and stuff like that, it comes to us, and it will be gradually be featured in a future episode of this podcast, and any written feedback too may be featured as well. All right, the fathers of Star Trek. Let's see here. So,
Yeah, where to start?
where to start? Well, I think we should start. I'm gonna start with Kirk. Actually, I think he's more of a father figure.
Yeah, but less
Especially,
to his own son though, his actual son.
yeah, more because he didn't know he had a son.
Yeah, until
Yeah,
Carol
until
Marcus casually dropped it out, and she was like, "But stay away," and he's like, "All right, cool."
okay, I'm cool. But I'm just saying, like, with his crew, his father
Yeah,
figure, the way he during the films, I mean, especially after the motion picture, uh, you know, It's like it's definitely, especially during the Genesis device trilogy, unofficial trilogy, um, uh, like it's like he loses Spock and stuff like that, and he loses his son and the Enterprise in the next movie, and then it's all redeemed in the end in the voyage home. Um, but there are like scenes in all four films that bring the sense of like camaraderie and sense of family amongst the Enterprise crew. Um, like the whole scene with when the Enterprise goes down on the Genesis planet after being blown up, and he tells Bones, "My God, Bones, what have I done?" And Bones goes, "What you had to do, what you always do, turn
Yeah.
death into a lifelong, into a fighting chance to live," and stuff like that. And other things as well. Like at the end of Search for Spock, he talks with Sarek and going like, "What cost your ship, your crew, your son?" But he said if I hadn't tried, the cost would have been my very soul, um, and stuff like that. And it's like I think that sense of family is very, very intertwined in those three films, and I think a little bit in the Final Frontier too. The one that everyone calls, at least my dad calls it, the Search for Jesus. Um,
Yeah.
so my dad calls it the Final Frontier, the Search for Jesus. Um, so there's a little bit of family in there too, but it's mostly in those middle films, 2 through 4. Um, Stuff like that. The feeling of family and stuff like that, because if I mean the death of Spock affects all of them, but then when he's resurrected, everything's like hunky dory. Everything like, oh,
Yeah.
everything's back to the way it was, but a little bit different, because when Spock returns in the voyage home, he doesn't get all the jokes and stuff like that. He like McCoy back to bantering with him, poking his bubble, and
Yeah.
so
Just like, I don't know what this is.
so that's why I think Kirk is like the father figure of his crew in those three films, especially. Um, you know,
Yeah. And I
you
feel
know,
that with like captains. Like I think we touched on that with Mother's Day stuff like Janeway
mhm,
feeling like a mother figure.
yeah,
Like just like the way that her captainship goes, she definitely feels like that. I'd say the same for Picard. Picard is basically a father figure to Wesley.
yes,
Like that feels like a very like fatherly relationship. And
yep,
I think that Star Trek does a good job of kind of spanning that, like being like not necessarily having kids, but feeling like a paternal and maternal person. Or even with fur babies like Archer and Data, even though Data actually has kids, like or a daughter and everything, like
hmm,
he has Spot, the cat, and he's a good dad to that cat, and Archer and his dog, like
yep.
a good fur baby parent.
Yeah, and I forgot about that. I forgot about Porthos and Spot, with Data and Archer. Um, you know, I mean, granted, I mean, Data does have kids, android kids, both in the Next Generation and in Picard. Um, like what was it? Soji and Dash
Yeah.
in Picard, but also
And
Lal
then Lal.
in the Next Generation. Um, yeah, I just forgot about those guys. Yeah, the fur babies, because I'm a fur daddy myself because I have a cat.
Yep.
Um, so uh, technically it's my wife's cat, but it's like I kind of like the one that's always around because I work from home. So, but definitely, yeah, Data and Archer definitely has like the fur daddies too. Yeah. So yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah, they're very affectionate
Yeah,
their
which I think
pet.
is important. 'Cause I think a lot of people nowadays, especially, just that's an important part of being a parent too. Being a parent doesn't necessarily mean having actual human children. Some people take care of animals. Some people adopt, and
Hmm.
adopting is becoming a more normalized thing. It doesn't have to be blood related. Like, I mean, even Worf has adoptive parents, that
Yep.
he's raised by, and that he has a relationship with too, that have shaped him. Like that's literally why he ends up in Starfleet. Otherwise, like, I don't think he would have gone down that path.
No, no, exactly. I forgot. Yeah, and unfortunately, Worf is written really badly as a father. Um,
Yes, Worf is a is an example of a bad father.
yes, very example of very, very bad father. Man, if Worf and Alexander, his biological son, ended up on the Maury show, gosh, they would be like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, there would have been some fighting. I also
or Jerry
there
Springer.
yeah, Jerry Springer is I'm like, yeah, that would have been intense.
Yeah.
I one of my favorite growths of a father figure is Rom and Nog
Oh yeah, yeah,
because
yep.
like at the beginning, like pre-Starfleet Nog is like that whole relationship is just like, it's just like you just hear that it's not a good relationship, and by them breaking their traditions and like going for the things they want to go for,
Hmm.
their relationship grows, and then you see a really good like father son like relationship grow between them. But definitely at the beginning it feels a little rough where you're like, whoa, this is not a good relationship. There's a lot of forced like tradition stuff going on that was
Yeah.
definitely putting pressure on their relationship,
Hmm.
like similar to even Wolf in the way he is with Alexander.
Hmm.
But at least with those guys, they actually like they actually grow and become better characters for it.
Yes, and yeah, Ramen Nog, in like I said, pre Starfleet Academy Nog, he's a troublemaker, um, and
Mm-hmm.
very, very like not very bright and stuff like that. But then when he decides to like apply for Starfleet Academy because he doesn't want to be like his father, who was like kind of like at the time Rom is portrayed as like a very dumb character and not very bright character himself. But then when it comes to like later on, their characters evolve, and Nog and Rom are pretty bright people. Because Rom eventually moves on from Quark's bar to being like a maintenance worker on the station, working under O'Brien and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and stuff like
Another
that.
great dad.
Yep, another great
Oh,
dad.
Brian's great.
Yeah, but yeah, and then Nog becomes this upstanding Starfleet officer, and despite losing her leg during the Dominion War, um, and stuff like that, and it's like and it eventually becomes a really uh, good dynamic for that aspect of the series, because Quark is totally against the whole thing, but then Rom
Yeah.
Rom is like very proud of his son,
Hmm.
doing something that he felt really passionate about, and it's like Quark was
Yeah, and
very.
I love that growth. Like that's why
Mhm.
I just love that. Like Ferengi definitely got a good rap and a chance to be like noted through that relationship where I'm like, hey, see, like that's really awesome to like see that growth and just be inspired by like, you can have some rough patches with parents or dads that struggle and have issues, but you can grow from it. People are always allowed to grow and heal. And I think seeing some of those relationships like written that way is really nice.
Yes, and it's really I'm glad that they were able to salvage the Ferengi in Deep Space Nine, because when they were first introduced in Next Generation, they were written to be the next big baddie.
Yeah.
And it turned out horrible, unfortunately, the way it was written. Um, and I know that to this day, Armin Shimmerman still shoulders blame for the way they were portrayed in Next Generation, at least in the first few episodes they were in. Um, he takes blame for it. Unfortunately, he still does to this day. Uh, but it's like it's okay. It's the way things were. But
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. But yeah, but I'm glad they were able to salvage that. So let's talk about O'Brien. You mentioned the example of a good dad. Uh Yeah, he's a good dad. He's written really good
Yeah.
as he's a good father figure. To not only
And
his children.
he's just like a he does everything on that ship. I mean, or the space station and on
Hmm.
the ship. Like
Hmm.
he's just such a like even though it's like that, it's stereotypical nuclear family,
Hmm.
he definitely has a good relationship with his kids and his wife, and it's like this classic like relationship between all of them.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, he's not only a good dad to his kids, but is also like the everyday man, everyday Joe
Yep.
character. I mean, granted, you know, um, it's kind of crazy about Cole Meany himself. He started out on the first episode of Next Generation, just a con officer on the battle bridge, and eventually he became this everyday Joe character. That people can relate to. Not only just like being in the transporter room on the Enterprise, but also the when he was on this one DS9, so being the operations officer. So it's like it's like the everyday Joe character that everyone can relate to. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
yeah.
at least for yeah, so like I would say yeah, those are like examples of like good dads or like good growth of parents. And then there's even like you see people who they themselves may not be parents, or if they are, like having good relationships with like their fathers. Like Archer and his dad
Mhm.
have an amazing relationship. Sisko and his dad have an amazing relationship.
Yeah.
Like it's something that you end up getting to see throughout the series. But
Yeah.
there's also plenty of bad relationships, and I feel like we see it a lot with like I saw it with like Riker and his dad,
Yep.
not a good relationship.
Hmm.
Bashir and his dad, not a good relationship. Spock and Sarek. Sarek just all around has a tough time with all of the kids. Each
Yeah.
time I'm like, oh yeah, screwed it up again. I don't know so much about I mean, at least with Michael Burnham and Spock, like you see that relationship have issues.
Yeah.
And then in the Kelvin timeline, it's a little changed and it's nicer, and there's a chance for it to kind of be rewritten and repurposed. But for the most part, it's like that really stereotypical dysfunctional relationship with children.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Sarek is kind of written as one of the bad fathers. I mean,
Yeah.
he had been disappointed by Cybok in the Final Frontier, but then also when Spock was being bullied and stuff like that in school and stuff like that, he didn't really care for it, I guess. But then regarding the whole Michael Burnham thing, I mean they treated Michael pretty well, but it was disappointing about that about her getting into the Vulcan Science Academy, that kind of thing, and like there was a whole episode about that in the first season of Discovery. You know, how the disappointment of he felt, when Michael was rejected, but Spock was accepted. Um, because Michael was human and stuff like that, and stuff like it was just the disappointment. It's just disappointment follows Sarek everywhere. I mean, he died
Yeah.
not knowing his son would forgive him. Would died knowing his son was off on Romulus doing whatever the heck he was doing. He didn't know what was going
Mm-hmm.
on. So, and stuff like that. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
disappointment follows Sarek everywhere. Uh,
Yeah. But you see like how those like how the bad father relationships affect a lot of characters in the show. Like you see like Tom Paris acting up a lot because of the expectations from his father. We see in the Kelvin timeline that same type of like loss of a father relationship with Kirk leaves him with a void that makes him kind of a acting up character as well, similar to Paris. Like you
yep.
see that same type of behavior. You see Belana Torres have a lot of issues with relationships and things because of her father abandoning her and her mom because of a failed marriage, and he's
Hmm.
human versus her Klingon mom.
Yep.
And then yeah, you can see, and then with Riker too, like his dad is just a huge narcissist, so it's hard to
Yeah.
you know own up to anything with him, and like never good enough for his dad.
Yes, yeah, and it's I think sometimes I think fathers put their too much like lofty expectations on their children.
And a lot of them try to live vicariously. I mean, that's like parents in general. Like some parents like to live vicariously through their kids or have high
Hmm.
expectations for them because it's something they didn't get to do or something they regret, which that's fine to push them that way, but let them be their own people. But you see it a lot with the dads of Trek, like a lot of these characters where they're like, I expected more of you, or like, you're not living up to my expectations. Like I was a lieutenant or a commander and you're not there yet. So I'm disappointed. Or you're
Yeah,
not doing what I expected. You joined Starfleet. Bah humbug. Like what you
yeah,
shouldn't have.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, oh yeah, like I remember Picard's father wasn't very happy about him joining Starfleet because I remember from that Tapestry episode, he said it was going to lead him to a bad end, which in that episode he did. Picard did, but it's all
Yeah.
wrapped up in 45 minutes. But and this and stuff like that. But yeah, and I remember Picard's father wasn't very approving of him being in Starfleet either. Wanted him to tend the vineyard like him did and his
Yep.
brother, um, and stuff like that. Stay away from Starfleet, that kind of thing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but and then I know I mentioned Worf is an example of a bad father and would be on the Jerry Springer show, probably fighting with Alexander, going like, "Well,
Yeah.
why did you abandon me?" and stuff like that. It would be, I mean, if Jerry Springer was around in the 24th century, they would have been on that show and they would have been duking it out.
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, but the ultimate father-son relationship is got to be Benjamin and Jake Sisko.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah,
100% my favorite. And
yeah.
like also just the I think one of the greatest things about that too is just not only like him being a black captain and that representation, but that he is a soft, like emotional black man, which in media is very underrepresented. Like there tends to be a lot of like this harsher like representation around a lot of black people in media, and that there's just like a lot of cultural stereotypes around that, and
Hmm.
he's just such a soft and emotional and just vulnerable person, and he's just so like loving with his son, and he's also just like they have a very like physical relationship, but they hug a lot. He gives them lots of hugs and kisses, and that he's not afraid to do that, and they're not embarrassed by it, and just a very like happy like relationship between them. And he's always supportive of him.
Yep, and everything he does, that kind of thing. We first meet them. It's like they're just the father's son. Their mother was killed during the Borg invasion, um, during the Best of Both Worlds, and stuff like that. And they go through this. They eventually come to like a more of a better relationship after Cisco finally deals with the grief that he had built up for
Yeah.
the 3 years in that time frame between the Best of Both Worlds and the start of DS9
Yeah.
and stuff like
And also
that.
when he finally accepts Jake's choice to become a writer
Hmm.
instead of going into Starfleet. But he kind of gets that feeling with with seeing with Nog and them like getting a chance to go to Starfleet, and kind of like gets to live vicariously through that because being a mentor anyway to them.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's like and I know when Jake and Nog started hanging out, both
Was
Rom and
not approving.
Ben and Rom were pretty much against it, going like, "Oh gosh, this is like horrible,"
Not good.
not good. And I remember like I just remember certain episodes from like the first few seasons, they were trying to break them up and stuff like that, and eventually, they became accepting you know of it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, eventually they came to terms of accepting it, and it ended up being a good thing for all four of them eventually. So, but and then I think personally, Cisco is my captain because I'm just gonna mention that right now. Cisco is my captain because I think he's the most human of the Starfleet captains. Because of the way, I mean, of him having a son, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
also he's like he cares about every single member of his crew, regardless of what they're doing. I mean, like examples are like whenever he seeks out Jadzia for advice or something like that, Jadzia is always there for him, giving him the advice and stuff like
They're
that.
still
And
good at being very like professional and being a captain though too.
mhm,
Like the episode with where O'Brien deals with that alien, that it's from the first season, where there's like an alien being hunted, but that's like the whole point of their like
yeah,
society and
yep,
like their species, like to be hunted,
yes,
and he tries to save them and step over like the prime
director,
directive,
yep,
and Cisco is like, we can't interfere, like sorry. But then O'Brien is like, okay, well then I'll just play the game and like help him escape and continue being hunted, right? I was playing by the rules. And he abandons his communicator and everything, and Cisco reprimands him for it, but
yep,
he bent the rules of it being like, take your time, Odo, like we're in no hurry to bust them and get them in trouble, so like go take care of it, but also take your time,
yeah,
but still like addressing things like he understands like there are still people who have like very personal like initiatives and things they believe in and want to stand for, but he
hmm
still has to like be professional and uphold standards of being a captain in Starfleet. But he will definitely show that he understands
yep,
what people are going through, or like, hey, I get it, but also like understand that costs you a little bit, something I'll report on your profile for not listening to me, like,
yeah,
but I totally get it, so good for
yeah,
you
yeah, and
for what you believe in.
he does that too often. He does it a few more times. Cisco does.
He does it a
Uh,
bunch with Kira. Him
Yep.
and Kira butt heads a lot, but he totally understands where she's coming from, so
Yeah, they
he tends to
do.
be like, I get it.
Yeah, I know he did. He did it to not only to O'Brien, to that Tosk character. It's Captain Pursuit you're mentioning. But there's also an episode in which Worf and his brother, does that ritual and stuff like that. And I mean, there's a limit to what I'll go through with my officers, but this is also, I kind of, you know, he just represents Worf for trying to kill his brother, and
Yeah.
yeah, because of all the things Worf did when he joined the crew, sided with the Federation against the Klingons, and that kind of thing,
Yep.
disgrace, that kind of thing, and and I just remember that episode, like he was not happy about it, but you gotta find some other way to deal with your family squabble.
Yeah.
So
And that's why I like Cisco too. Like Cisco is definitely one of my favorite captains. Like it's hard to
mhm,
choose. I especially, I mean, I like Janeway too. It's between Janeway and Cisco for me, but also Picard's amazing too. So it's hard to choose. I Between those three, they're definitely like my favorite. But Cisco is definitely for being like a good father figure, being a really professional captain, but still upholding the belief that people have to pursue their and uphold their beliefs as well.
mhm,
And sometimes that means bending rules or defying him, and he's like, I get it, but also there has to be actual like consequences to these too, so to understand that, and it's nothing personal, but
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, yeah, and I know that certain things that he did too, to bend the rules just to justify the means. The end, with the phrase "the ends justify the means,"
Exactly.
like certain things that he did personally too. But we can talk about captain's ethical dilemmas in our episode.
Oh yeah.
uh, there's a whole bunch,
Ties
but
into that paternal maternal thing.
yeah, like certain things that he does to yeah, to do with his. I know, like you said, Cisco and Kira butt heads a lot, but hey, they come to an understanding at the end of the day,
Yep.
and same with the rest of the crew. He comes with the butt heads of stuff, certain things that he does that certain characters do, and eventually they come to understanding. Not necessarily with Quark, but and other secondary characters like Garrick or something like that, but definitely with the main definitely the main crew,
Yeah.
with like Worf and Kira and Bashir and Jadzia and Ezri eventually too.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, definitely. I really can't think of any more good fathers other than Benjamin Sisko for that reason,
Yeah. It's
because
mostly, I feel like a lot of the fathers in Star Trek, it tends to be more like not so much of the main characters being parents or like fathers, but more so their relationships with their fathers or like things that impact them. Like you see a lot of
Mhm.
paternal impact from the relationships with their fathers. Like Archer only becomes a captain because of his own like father. And
Yep,
in a regular timeline, Kirk does the same thing, and even inevitably in the Kelvin timeline, still ends up doing that to basically come to terms with his father dying and
yeah,
being like, I'm going to honor him by going into Starfleet.
yeah,
But
definitely.
you can see like the effects of like a really bad relationship. Like there's really neutrals like Data and his creator, his father. There's like
Yeah,
a very like confusing relationship there of like almost a paternal thing, but it's still definitely more of like a like creature created like a Frankenstein and Dr. Frankenstein and monster situation of being created. And it's like, does he see Data as his son or
hmm
more of his creation? Is there a
yeah,
difference? I don't know.
yeah. That's a good question because I know that that's a good question because I mean that relationship between Dr. Nguyen Sung and Data are like it's a little awkward. Maybe because Data has no emotion, but
Yeah.
that's maybe the reason why. But it's like and it's very confusing. But I don't know. I don't know if he can. We don't know if he considers him his son or his creation. His mother considered him his son, but uh,
Yeah. And that's why it feels confusing. So I'm like, do you also see Data as your like as your
yeah,
kid? Or like are you a father or are you a creator?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of crazy, to see that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, he calls him his father.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so I think it's kind of interesting to I don't know how it's all gonna evolve when it comes to Picard, because we got actually Noonan's actual son, Dr. Alton Indigo Soong. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't. I mean, it's interesting, to see that we
Yeah. I
got
wonder
actually
what
got
dads we're gonna see next.
what kind of what member of the Soong family we're gonna see next in Picard.
Yeah, what familial like thing is gonna happen? Like, and I wonder about with like Picard, especially with season 2 coming up, and what that's gonna entail. Like with Q, like what is Q gonna put him into? Like, is it gonna be a familial situation, like something in the past? Like,
hmm
what is he doing that is gonna bring out the past in Picard? Like, I feel like it has something to do with that, but it does feel weird where I'm like, what family things are gonna happen? Whose dads are coming out in this episode or in this series season?
Yeah, because I know that. Oh yeah, Riker's also a dad too. I forgot about that.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot
He
about
is
that.
John Luke Riker.
Yeah, Jean-Luc Riker, which ended up being an alien from this planet, but
Yeah. Super weird, but
it was super weird. But then in Picard, he actually is a father. Kestra Troy Riker,
yep.
and with the bunny corn sausage and stuff like that on that planet, and they had a son which unfortunately died, but yeah. From what I understand, it was Thaddeus Worf Triker or Riker Troy, I think was the name.
Yeah, I can't remember the name.
Yeah, it was Thad Riker. I know Thad Troy Riker, but from what I understand from Michael Chabon, the showrunner from the first season, his full name was Thaddeus Worf Riker Troy Riker.
Just
So
everyone who's inspired you, name them after everybody.
yeah, name
All my
after
friends, name it one.
yeah. I mean, like hey, it's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. What an ode.
Yeah, what an ode to that. Yeah, definitely. We got Worf mentioned somehow.
Yeah.
I think that's about it for the Fathers of Trek. I don't know if anything else I can bring up. Any final thoughts?
I'm pretty much just asking people who is your favorite dad of Trek, or what's your favorite fatherly relationship, or least favorite. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I want to hear it too. So feel free to send us feedback. Definitely like voice messages, Facebook messages, comments on our
Yeah,
YouTube channel or Facebook post or Instagram post. Just keep in mind they'll be used. We'll
yeah.
definitely read them or listen
We'll
to
shout
them.
it out.
Yeah, definitely. So until next time, take care and live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.